start in a minute.
Good evening and welcome to Territory Talk. I am your co-host, Shaina Smith Archer, and welcoming everyone from near and far to another episode of Women in Leadership. First off, let me give apologies for my other two co-hosts that are unable to join us tonight, so they left me to hold the fourth, but that's okay. Women were in the world, so I had two wonderful, fabulous women tonight that are gonna talk to us about leadership and life, as I termed it when I sent out my text this afternoon. And without any further ado, I'd also like to say thank you to our media partners. As you guys know, we've grown a bit since over the last few months. So thank you to Cayman Marl Road Facebook page, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands, CBN Radio, FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, PJFE FM 93.9, and our newest media partner is Barbados's Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, Channel 8. So again, thank you. We are all across the region. We're spreading out. And if there is any media houses that would like to carry the show, feel free to drop us a message on our Facebook or YouTube pages, and we will get right back to you guys about it. All right. So tonight I have with me two women I am very excited to speak to. We have Dr. Shangri-La Durham-Thompson from Bermuda, and my sister cousin is Janette Brin from the Virgin Islands. Ladies, good evening and welcome to Territories Talk.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. All right, so we will start off the discussion with allowing you guys to introduce yourself, tell our viewers a little bit about you, and get into our discussion tonight. So, Dr. Thompson, we'll start with you.
Me. Okay. I'm Shangri-La Durham-Thompson, and I'm the daughter of Julia Durham and Coolidge Durham, who deceased, my father. But I was brought up in Bermuda, very participatory in church events. I consider myself a child of God, and I believe that God has directed my whole life. So everything that I've done, I give honor and praise to him. I'm one of four siblings. I have a sister, Dr. Donna Durham Pierre, who actually is a research scientist and discovered the P gene. So maybe she's somebody you need to have on. She's somebody who discovered the gene for vitiligo, and she's been in Bermuda and done talks around that at the Bermuda College. And then my other sister, Shelby Durham Jackson, she is the owner of a healthcare agency in Philadelphia. And when President Bill Clinton was around as president, he had her at the White House to give talks on small business. And she's been celebrated by the Chamber of Commerce in Philadelphia. She lives in Philadelphia. And then I have a brother who just passed because of COVID. And he was a licensed preacher in the AME church, a pastor, not a pastor, reverend, we call them. A pastor is when you have a church of your own, and he had just gotten his itinerancy and unfortunately passed a few months later after he completed all of his studies. So these are the people that I grew up with, my siblings. We were all very, very close. My mother taught us to appreciate differences, and we're all different. We celebrate who we are. They celebrate me. I'm personally somebody who is involved in the arts. I'm a visual artist. I paint with acrylic and oil when I can. I haven't picked up a brush now in about 3 months. So do I really consider myself an artist? I'm somebody who has a desire and a passion to do that, and maybe that will happen shortly. I'm an author. I've published poetry books. I am also a playwright. I've written numerous plays that have been performed both in Bermuda and in the United States. And I'm a teacher, an educator, I should say, of over 40 years, starting in 1976. And I also started to work in the church school at the same time. My mother said, once you got your degree, you don't stop there. Your degree is not just for the everyday world, not just for school, it's for God as well. And so she said, get yourself up to the church school and start teaching. So I've been teaching in the church school since 1976. I've been the superintendent of my church school I was the superintendent for almost 30 years. And today I'm the conference superintendent for the District of Bermuda. We have 11 AME churches here, and I'm the conference superintendent for the 11 churches in Bermuda. Oh, wow. So that's kind of a little bit about who I am. My name is Shangri-La, okay? And my Aunt Valerie gave me that name, and Shangri-La means eternal youth and beauty. So I think that my name is prophetic. And I've gone 60, but I try to be youthful, and I enjoy the youth. I love Bermuda's youth. I just love children, period. And I have a granddaughter now, so I've started to write about her. I've got a series of books, 2 that have been published already and 1 about to be published. And it's called, her name is Princess Soleil. We call her Princess, but she is Nina Soleil. And so after she was born, I decided I would start writing. I was reading books and figuring, I can do this. And her mother heard me say it. And then just before her first birthday, she said, are you going to write a story about Nina? And I thought, is she kidding me? But that's where the journey began. So I praise God for everything that has happened in my life. He has been instrumental in directing my life. And I can tell you all kinds of things about what he has done for me. But I'm grateful for the opportunity that he's given me to be able to impact others. And I'm a radio talk show host for Magic 102.7 in Bermuda. We come on every Saturday, and my show is called The Need to Lead. And what I do is I select guests every week to demonstrate their leadership potential, because people, I find, in the world are looking for leaders without realizing that they themselves are leaders. And so what I do is say, God has given everybody a gift, a talent, a strength that has to be developed for his glory. And so I encourage people to talk about the strength that God has given them, the perfect skills that he has given them, and encourage them to develop those skills so that other people can see that. I'm a John Maxwell trained, certified trainer. And one of the things I learned from John Maxwell was the law of the picture, that people do what people see. And so I encourage people to do what they can do. Don't emulate anybody else. Be authentic. Be yourself and use the talents that God has given you. And he said he'll put you before queens and kings if you use your talents for him. So that's, I guess, who I am.
So, Janette, when we get to her stage of life, I hope we have.
How do I follow that? It's such an honor to be here in your presence, Dr. Thompson.
Definitely.
I'm glad to know you, and I hope after this show we'll have better connections.
Of course.
So I thank Famous for this opportunity.
So I guess.
So, Miss Brin, you're up next.
I'm up next. Oh my goodness. All right. So who am I? For the viewers, I am Janette Brin, born and raised in the Virgin Islands. I claim both the U.S. and British Virgin Islands proudly. I am first and foremost, I'm a very proud mom. People who know me know I just am just in awe of my son. Such a blessing. And I thank God every day for him in my life, because he helps to make me who I am and encourages me to push hard at things that I want to do. So his name is Keanu Brin, and if he's watching, Mommy loves you. I come from most Caribbean nationals. I come from a family of entrepreneurs who I'm all very proud of. My twin sister, Lynette, who owns a flower shop and events company here in the British Virgin Islands, along with her husband. My brothers, Ricky and Kai, who are captains and just like jacks of all trades. They're so talented. My mom, who runs Smith's Ferry Services here in the British Virgin Islands. So my family is also contributing a number of years to the transportation services here in the Virgin Islands. So I'm very proud of that as well. For me, on my entrepreneurial venture, I am the founder, publisher, and owner of Caribbean Posh magazine, which I have been doing for several years now. Which started during my undergrad period, where I wanted to figure out something to do with myself after school, and something that I felt not only allowed me the opportunity to do things that I was passionate about, which is celebrating my culture, fashion, style, and all that sort of thing, but also creating a platform for Caribbean people, or women like me in particular, who need a voice and need opportunity to showcase who they are and what they have to say. So over the years, we've expanded into a lifestyle brand, doing the whole Power Brunch series here in the Virgin Islands. So a lot of people have since started calling me Miss Posh, Miss Posh. And I take it because I define Posh as smart girl, and it's meant to really, in a fun way, inspire us as Caribbean women to take pride in who we are, laugh about it, have fun with it, and just live life. So that in a nutshell helps to define who I am. And if I could add to that, I would just say, one of the things that I'm most thankful for as I think about all the things that define who I am is the opportunity to just have continuous learning opportunity, meet new and interesting people. I've met some amazing people along the way, and just today, I'm being on this show, I'm meeting another amazing Caribbean woman. So that's always a blessing. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, yes. If anybody had any doubts about my post today, that I am, just wonderful people, and I'm a posh girl, so that's my what you call it, full disclosure. So, Dr. Shangri-La, you have to come to the next posh event. We're gonna make sure.
I will try. That's interesting. I know the details. Let's see what can happen.
So it's always around Mother's Day weekend, correct, Jan?
It usually is. However, due to the COVID, we kind of changing things up. So stay tuned to a relaunch of the event. One of the things COVID inspired me to do is just kind of rethink and just refresh and re-energize. So stay tuned for bigger and better.
All right. So I'm going to drop the link for it in the chat in a while, so everybody can go and like and follow all the social media pages and keep up with everything that's happening. Definitely. So while you're on the floor, tell us about your career and why did you choose that?
I think for me, it's really started with my choice to study marketing. So I would have done my undergrad and my MBA program in marketing. When I was trying to decide what to study at university, I went with marketing because I felt it was something that I could utilize in just about anything I chose to do, whether it was, to focus on a personal brand, because we all are brands, especially if you're a career-oriented individual, you are a brand, or whether I was going to work in a corporate entity. So throughout my career, I've had the fortunate opportunities to work in leadership positions with Cable and Wireless, BVI, now known as Flow, CCT, BVI, the local telecom, and before coming home to the Virgin Islands, Maryland State Department of Business and Economic Development, now known as Maryland Department of Commerce. So all roles that allowed me to really have some fun in marketing, see and experience exciting things. And then all along the way, still being a Caribbean woman and looking for opportunities for people like myself, it led me to the whole idea of this magazine. My son and I walking in the bookstore. He's in the books in his his Naruto and stuff like that. If for those of you who have young kids who into the anime stuff, he will be in those series, and I'll be in my magazines or my career-oriented books, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And the idea for starting a magazine came about during that period of my life, and here I am today, just as an entrepreneur. No major investors, just pushing what I believed in creating this platform for Caribbean women to have a voice and celebrate who they are and what they want to say. So it kind of just all came together, if you will. I had a dare to dream and a dare to just do it.
Make it happen.
Make it happen. I mean, a lot of long nights just making it happen.
Awesome. So, Dr. Shangri-La, I love this name.
Why?
I love your name. I love your name. So well, you have had a very assortment, I would say, in terms of a career, but what I guess education is your mainstay in terms of what you do. Why did you choose that as your career path?
Well, I will tell you this. I told you that God has directed my whole life, and I believe that. I believe God chose me for the work that I do. Okay, I didn't choose the work. I remember wanting to be a teacher as a young child and thinking, what in the world would I teach? You know, math wasn't my forte, although English language was something that I was always good at. But my mother told me that I used to recite the Lord's Prayer in church at the age of 3. And so from that age on, whenever there were church events, I would be up to recite poetry. And later on in my teens, when I had another pastor come to the church, he introduced me to Black writers. And I started to do things like the creation, poetry by Langston Hughes. And then in high school, I had Black studies. And so that led me on another path, because I used to go around Bermuda. People would ask me to recite poetry, and I would recite for them. And then my pastor, who introduced me, as I said, to other Black writers, he introduced me to Simple, for instance, and Life for Me Ain't Been No Crystal Stair, Mother to Son. And he had me reciting things in church that I had never recited before, that I would do. I would recite at Easter time and Christmas. I would be in the plays. I would pray in church and do all those kinds of things. And so when he left Bermuda, he asked my mom, what are you going to do with Shangri-La? What is she going to do? My mother said she's going to college. So he said, well, where is she going? And so he introduced me to North Carolina A&T State University, which is the #1 historically Black college and university in North Carolina. So a proud Aggie. Okay. Hey. So in 1972, I went off to A&T to study, and my mother came to me and she said, now I don't even remember the application, right? My mother and my pastor figured it all out, and then they came to me and said, what are you going to study in university? Now, I honestly thought that I was going away for like 1 year. And somebody in my class at high school said to me, you won't even say you're going to college. You're saying you're going to university? I didn't know the difference at that point. Okay, so I went off to A&T State University, and my mother said, you're good in English language. Maybe you want to study English language and become a teacher. And she said, then maybe not. You're good in public speaking and doing all this. Maybe you want to study speech and theater education, and then you take English as a minor, and you can come back and study English with a dramatic flair. So that's what I did. I came back. And I taught at elementary school at first, because I had a teaching scholarship. I forget what they call it right now, but I went away on a teacher training scholarship. And so they called me and told me that I had to come back and give some time. And at that time, I was going on to do a master's degree at Temple University, where my sister ended up going. And then she graduated, went to Howard. So I was looking to, go along with her. She was my younger sister, and I did her application for her, and as well as myself. And I ended up going to A&T, graduating from there, coming into the teaching profession. And I taught elementary for 2 years, went back to get a master's degree, came back home, and I taught at the high school level. And then I got another master's degree, because I thought I was going for a doctorate. And everybody in Bermuda, in the cohort that I was in, they dropped out. So I ended up getting a second master's degree, right? So I taught at high school for 18 years. I taught speech and drama, communications, debate, and English language. And then an offer came up at the same time. I was still in church, still in school. And during this time, I was writing plays for my students. I wanted to hear their voice, because the work that I was giving them, like until my pastor came, I was reading all kinds of things, but nothing to do with me ethnically, okay, until he came and introduced me to another realm of work. And so with Black Studies under my belt in high school, and then going off to A&T with John Marshall Kilimanjaro, who was my professor. He was a person responsible for the Carolina Peacemaker. He owned the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And so he went away and came back and called himself Kilimanjaro. So everybody was like, well, what is this? But he was sort of like a mentor to me and guided me. And in fact, when I went back to take my sister to university, after I had been teaching for about 8 years, I had been teaching 2 years. And he said to me, are you going to go and get a master's degree? And I said, yes. And he said, what are your grades like? And I said, I have good grades. He picked up the phone and called someone at University of North Carolina and said, Thomas Tedford, this is John Marshall. I have this young girl in my office. She is a good student. I'm sending her over to you. And that's how I got into grad school. I took the test after I got there. You had to do your GMAT or whatever. I did that after I was accepted. I did that. And then I came back after high school and teaching and working with children, writing plays. And for my church, I was the director of drama. And so every year we would do a play in the community for the church. And I would do one for my school setting, the high school. So there were 2 plays a year going on that I was writing them myself to make it culturally relevant, right? And so then a position came up to be the education officer for the arts and for English language. They gave me both positions and I chose the arts. And so I was responsible for music, art, theater, and dance in the Bermuda public school system for 8 years as the officer. And I introduced something called Spring into the Arts, where all of the children from all schools, we have 18 primary schools, 5 middle schools at that time, and 2 senior schools. And so all the schools would come together and demonstrate some artistic quality from their school, either art, music, theater, dance. I would give them 3 minutes, and it went for 5 nights. And I would be exhausted at the end of the 5 nights, and we would have people working on set design and people working on all aspects of theater. And then I started my doctorate, and I needed some time. And so I was seconded I had told the Department of Education that as an officer, I think the officers need to exchange with principals, and they need to see what it is that we do. So he sent me to a school where I became the assistant principal of a middle school, and I was there for 1 year. At the end of that, I said, I'm not ready to go back to the Department of Education in that job. I haven't finished my degree, and that would take too much time. So he ended up saying, okay, you can be seconded for a 2nd year. But during that time, they offered me a position as the elementary school principal. And so I became a principal, and I stayed there for 12 to 13 years before they asked if I would come back to the department and assume the position of education officer for the arts and leadership. So that was a little added responsibility. I was going to infuse the arts in all subjects, math, English language, social studies, just through the whole thing. And today I am the acting assistant director for curriculum and assessment. And so I'm going off tomorrow to invigilate exams at a senior school, but it's not necessarily part of the world. But but like I said, this all started with God, and God all the way through has been there with me, And at one point, there was a challenge as because if you can see, I'm sort of I'm effervescent. I'm passionate about what I do, and I can be overwhelming. And so as a principal, my teachers were like, if it was a new thing coming on, oh, Dr. Thompson's going to have us doing that. You know what I mean? And so there was a question, is she really a good leader or not? And so I ended up taking a course because I'm a Rotarian as well. And I was president of Rotary for 1 year. And I got an opportunity to go to New York City and to represent Bermuda at, workshops at the United Nations. And everything just sort of came together. And when I questioned my leadership, I looked at what I was doing to people because I didn't understand the law of buy-in. It was, I think I'm qualified. I think I know what I'm doing. So here's an idea. I've researched it. Let's do it. And it was just too much. When I did the John Maxwell training, I found that it changed my life. I apologized to my staff. We start working on John Maxwell principles. And then the radio show came. That was in 2015. And so now every Saturday I have a radio show. I have a guest every Saturday, a different guest, hopefully a different guest. But there are so many people that have leadership qualities and abilities who don't understand that they have them. And they're looking for the leader off in the distance. You are the leader. And so what I do is I encourage them to be the best that they can be. So that's my career.
In a nutshell. I think one of the things that I find interesting, I don't remember if you mentioned it before, because I know you said you have grandchildren. How many children do you have?
One granddaughter. I
Okay.
want more. My son lives downstairs, and if there's anybody out there, he's 38. So I'm making an appeal. He's a nice looking boy, you know.
I see how mothers do this to their kids, you know.
Yeah, he's good about that, though. He doesn't get embarrassed. I was speaking in church a couple of years ago, and as I went to the pulpit, he was in the audience, and I let everybody know that I had a fine-looking son there, and if there were any Christian women out there looking for husbands, he was available.
Well, he can't say you're not looking out for his best interest at all. That is awesome. But you know, one of the things I really glean from everything that you're saying is that, you know, really and truly, when you understand purpose, that it drives you.
That's
because
right.
I'm sure there were times when, you know, when you looked at your to-do list, you were just exhausted looking at the list. But you understood the importance of, you know, you have an assignment on your life. And it's one of those things, I don't remember, I think it was Dr. Miles Monroe used to say it all the time. He's like, you know, some of the best ideas in the world are in the graveyards because people die with their ideas because they haven't, you know, lived out their potential, you know. And I hear that from you, and it's something that, you know, it's contagious almost in terms of, yeah, you know, sometimes it does feel overwhelming. Janette, I don't know about you, but I know that's one of the challenges that I sometimes face as a leader, in terms of we have so much to do, and you feel very driven to get it done. Sometimes you actually have to, you know, tell yourself 24 hours in a day, we're gonna pick it up tomorrow. But what have been some of your challenges or highlights in your career, and how did you deal with them?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of times where I felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do this anymore. But we quickly get over those type of feelings, have a little conversation with God, as I do every morning, every night, to just get that motivation and get that, remember, why is it I'm doing this work, to keep me going. And of course, support of my family and friends, my mom, my sister. They're always there. My brother's always there to encourage me. In fact, every Monday, my siblings and I, we have a group call, just to talk about what we're doing and talk about what we would like to be doing, just giving that support, that sibling support for each other, because we recognize the importance of, you know, creating that or building that path and that legacy, or that road of opportunities for our children. So we're committed to putting that work in today by supporting each other wholeheartedly. So in terms of specific challenges around Caribbean Posh magazine, you know, obviously for those who have ever thought of starting a publication, publications can be very costly. So I did have those times early on where, you know, I was creating a lot of debt for myself. So I had to learn some hard lessons early on, but it didn't discourage me because I still was continuously inspired and motivated by people calling me or writing to me, telling me, they really like what I'm doing, or they would love to be a part, and stuff like that. So I felt that people were interested and wanted that platform that recognized them or celebrated them. So those are the type of things that really keep me going. Some other highlights besides just those people encouraging me or showing appreciation. Opportunities that I've had over the years to interview some wonderful people, like Yvette Knowles Shore, who's Beyonce's publicist from Grenada. I met her earlier on in my endeavor to do this publication. And she was, being where she is in her career, so open and willing to lend a hand back and give me, not just allow me to feature her or participate in my brunches. She also, encouraged me and gave me advice on things to help me, really get this Caribbean Posh where she knew that I was working towards. So, interviews with Wyclef Jean, with Shaggy, Angela Hunt, who came to a number of our brunches as well. These are all amazing Caribbean people doing amazing things. So it's all inspiring, and it's a lot of work. It's time consuming to get it done and pull together to ensure that people not only are inspired, but are also motivated to really find what they would like to do as individuals and use the platform to help them, get where they're trying to go. So yeah, it's all enlightening and enriching at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's one of the things for us that, persons tend to think of leaders as, whether they're just strictly in business or even political.
Mm-hmm.
And not see, for example, with Dr. Thompson, she's an awesome example of a community leader, not just because she's in charge of different things, of had leadership positions, but, by definition in terms of what she's teaching. So, I left it to Chris to actually select the other guests, and he did not point. And I told him, I said, yeah, these two sound like a very good mix of, in terms of showcasing us as Caribbean women in leadership, and how we inspire other women. Because for me, one of the things that I look around and am always thinking about, since I'm an engineer, is how do I get more women in the field that I'm in?
Yeah.
And to inspire that. What are your thoughts about that?
Sorry, you just brought one thought to my mind. Shaina, well, you're familiar with brunch since you've participated in a brunch as both a speaker and an attendee.
Yes.
But I just wanted to highlight one thing from that type of activity. One of the things I recognize, we as Caribbean women, in my mind, we don't network enough, or we don't know how to network, and we're not always open to just
make those connections. Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why we do the brunch, to try to encourage that, because we shy without knowing we shy. There'll be some amazing women in the room, and we're
not talking to each other.
How they're dressed, they look great, or whatever we want to talk. But how I have an opportunity. I'm in a room with Yvette Knowles Shore. I don't get this opportunity every day. What am I going to do with this opportunity right now? Mm-hmm. Do you need me to introduce you, or are you going to introduce yourself? You have to choose which one you're going to do. You just have to start the conversation. And I guess, too, it also starts with knowing what you want to do with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
All right. Dr. Durham, I see you nodding a lot, Dr. Thompson.
Yes, I'm with what she's saying. So when Chris asked me first about being on the show, I turned it down. And I was like,
on what basis?
I was so busy. I feel like I just came from a funeral today where I wrote a poem for the person that passed away. And so I was at the funeral, I recited the poem, and last week, Saturday, was my church school convention. So on the first Saturday of every month, I'm doing something with the church school, and I have somebody else who takes my show, Dr. Lou Simmons, who I work with at the Department of Education, who is my director. He saw me one day being overwhelmed, and he said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "You can't help me." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "This is outside of work, you know." I said, "I've got so many things going on." And he said, "What do you need help with?" I said, "Would you take my radio show?" I just said it as a joke. And he said, "Well, how often you want me to take it?" I said, "Once a month." He said, "Okay." He's been doing it for like 4 or 5 years.
Nice.
That's like how 1 year secondment that turned into 12.
That's right.
But I think you guys just raised a very important point in terms of not just the networking, but the support.
Mhm.
That's important for us as women in leadership, because, you know, I think whether it's men or women, we kind of approach it differently
Yeah.
in terms of what we want to do and how we want to accomplish it. But we always need to remember, and I think to remind all of you, especially our young women that are coming along the path, that, you know, it's important to have that support system, you know, because a lot of times people are willing to help, but we're not as willing to ask for the help.
Yeah.
You know, so see how easy that was, and she got a host.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like making yourself vulnerable. So that is so important. So who were the women that inspired you? I think you guys may have touched on it, but in terms of getting into leadership, some of our past guests would talk about family members or maybe even professors. I think you touched on it, Dr. Thompson, in terms of one of your mentors. But in terms of women who you may have seen in leadership roles, and again, it's not about just business or politics, but in any leadership capacity around you, you know, who have been your inspirations?
You want me to go first?
Oh, you go ahead.
Well, my mother is my greatest inspiration. And I tell you that because my mother had 4 children. All of us are different. All of us have our strengths. And that's one of the things I learned from her. And I remember her saying she went to school once, and the teacher said to her, "This daughter has done extremely well. And this daughter over here, why isn't she like her?" And my mother said, "Well, one is named Shangri-La, one is named Shelby, one is named Donna. They're all different. I even gave them different names." So my mother taught me from that aspect that everybody has their own strengths, and she didn't subject herself to any nonsense, you know. Even in school, when they said you had to take the test, GCEs, you had to get GCEs at that time to go on to school. And my mother said, "GCEs? As if you're going on to England or whatever." She said, "But my daughter's going off to school. It doesn't matter whether she gets a GCE or not." And my mother worked to get me accepted in a university when I was in my 4th year of high school. Nobody believed it when I went back to school, but that was because my pastor was leaving and he wanted to set everything up before he left. And so he worked with my mother, and I got an acceptance into university when I was beginning my last year of high school, because you had to have so many credits, and in the British system I qualified with all of the credits that I needed to get. So my mother is one who is like an iconoclast. She's an image breaker. She doesn't believe in the status quo and that this is the only thing that can happen. Even in church, she would push me. I said, "Mama, there are other people that God gave you that gift. They didn't give that to her. You go ahead and you do this." You know what I mean? So she's been like my greatest leader. Even today, my mother's in a wheelchair, and one of her friends passed, and he is the past premier, and his wife passed. My mother was friendly with them. And she's made great friends all around Bermuda, and people who have done amazing things. And they've helped me in becoming who I am. You know, when I came back from college, I got involved with a political party, and the past premier, who was Alex Scott at the time, I remember going to his house and having talks about the state of Bermuda and the state of the economy and what it is that we need to do. And so they put me on a television show as I had just graduated college to give an aspect of Bermuda from someone who had returned as a young person. And so I met people like Dame Lois Brown Evans, who was head of the Progressive Labor Party. She wasn't the premier at that time. You know, our party hadn't come into power, and she was just a phenomenal woman. When I wrote the theater boycott play, she was there in the audience, and she applauded me, and she said, you know, when I pass one of these days, I want you to write about me. Well, I've never done it yet, but you know. But these are the kinds of people that have been in my life. In primary school, it was my teacher, Lillian Woolridge. And she said we had to take the 11+ exam to get into high school, because you could go to high school and pay, or you can go to high school on scholarship. And she said to me, your mother doesn't have any money, nor does your father. And you are going to this high school if I have to beat you in the door. You're going to get a scholarship. And if your mother gets in the way, I will beat her too. She was my school teacher in primary school. She was also my teacher in church school on Sundays. And then they had her sometimes on Friday night for young people's department. So this woman was like in my head, you know. And when I graduated college, the first thing she did after my mother sent me to the church to participate at the church school level, she said to me, I want you to be the superintendent. I was 22 years old. You want me to be the who? I just got back. Like, what? Okay, but that was the expectation. So these are people that believed in me. People in my church, they appreciated my gifts and my talents, and they would applaud even. Look, listen, my paintings, I painted all the way through high school, well, my last year of high school and all through college. And my paintings helped to subsidize my school fees. And my mother said she used to make me angry because I painted best when I was angry. But when I came back, she took all of my artwork, and she put everything together, and I had an art show at one of the hotels.
Wow.
And then this man who was a past premier, he ran an agency called Scott Craft, and he published as well. And so he took all my paintings and put them together. And for my graduation gift, he gave me all of these paintings in a little box, you know, where you can put them in a slide projector and see all the paintings. But I've had people in my life that God has put there that I couldn't have asked for. It's not like I went out searching. And when you talk about networking like this, I have two sisters, like I told you. My sisters live in North Carolina. One was in North Carolina. She taught at Winston-Salem State University and was a professor there. She just retired, and now she's working with my other sister in Philadelphia. So every time I get a break, if I go even and visit my son in Philadelphia, it's like, okay, so when are you coming over to spend the night and some time with me? So I'd love to network more with other women, but my sisters are like, we haven't seen you in a while. Now you need to come here and be with us. So maybe now I'll take them to you, to Janette.
Yes. Bring them on. Bring them over. That sounds like a plan. I think they just got the invitation through Territory Song.
Right.
I think they did. That is awesome. So, Jen, I think I have an idea. I'm going to let you tell everybody who have been your inspiration.
Well, I've been blessed to meet a lot of wonderful, amazing women. But my mother is just number one for me, hands down. My mom, Marjorie Smith, those of you who know her, especially from school days, you would know that she was a teen mom of twins, and, despite that challenge in her life and the sacrifices she had to make as a result, even after, having us and then later on looking to further her education because she also wanted to be a lawyer, and she ultimately gave that up to not only to be there for her children, but to also be there for her father, the late Ira Smith. She gave up what she wanted to do to help him run the Smiths Ferry services. So, and I say that to say, not just say, but paint the picture of just how unselfish my mother is. She puts everyone before herself. And now, you know, in this day and age, myself along with my siblings, we're always trying to tell her to come on now. No, we love you, Mom. We know you're always going to be there, and she is always there. But we try to encourage her to take more time for herself. But she is the most amazing woman you ever want to meet. She is so giving. She's a Rotarian as well. I don't even know how she finds time for that, plus working 7 days a week at Smith's Ferry Services, helping so many people get where they got to go. You have no idea how difficult this can be on a daily basis. And still have time to deal with her children, her grown children, still calling her for this, that, and the other. But she's always there from day one, always there. I mean, if we were in a school play, we went to high school in New York, and she would be there. She would jump on a plane, and you best believe the loudest person in the audience was my mother. And those moments just always stayed with me. And one particular story she always reminds me of, you know, she'd always tell me, Jen, when you were little, you would say to me that, Mom, I want to be just like you. And she said to me that, no, I want you to be better than me. So I pushed myself for her. And I pushed myself, you know, because she didn't get to do everything that she wanted to do. So I am her. I am her opportunity to do everything that she may not have had the opportunity to do earlier in her life. And I kid you not, she loves her children like
nobody.
So I can't thank her enough for all that she does.
Yes, and I saw her on earlier, so she's tuned in. So hi, Cousin Marge. But yeah, we are chatting away. I forgot to thank our media partners, so let's pause and do that real quick.
Okay.
So thank you to all our Territory Stock media partners: Cayman Marl Road Facebook page, Montserrat ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, PJFE FM, that's 93.9, and Barbados's CBC Channel 8. Thank you again, you guys, for coming on board and, you know, supporting us, because we're spreading out. We just started. Actually, we're going to be making a year in 2 months with this show. It sure did while we were having fun. Yeah, so we got to figure out something for that, Chris. So I know, and apologies again for my other two co-hosts. They left me alone tonight, but, you know, we're having some fun here. So I'm going to say good night to Eden and Chris, who aren't able to join us tonight. So, you know, they're still around. They're just not on tonight. So, and that's the good thing about team working. So if someone's not available, we all, you know, pull together and make sure the show still happens. So that's a good thing. That's awesome. Well, guys, our time is starting to wind down, but I still have a few questions I want you to touch on. And we can't leave tonight without talking about, I guess, two things. One, what was your reaction when you saw that Prime Minister Mia Motley was nominated as one of the top 100, I think it was, influential persons in the world on Time Magazine?
Not surprised at all.
No surprises there, right?
That's awesome.
She's amazing.
I have a friend, MP, you've had on the show, Renee Webb.
Mm-hmm.
She introduced me to her. I think she's a good friend of hers, and I know Renee will be ecstatic. So, yes. Yeah. I just want to put this in here, just in case. This crazy computer just said something about it's going to shut down in 5 minutes to update. So, if anything happens, I put, it said, or you can check a time. And so I put time, but I haven't seen anything. It just disappeared. So
geez.
Okay. Check out.
It should hopefully wait till the time that you said.
Yeah. I didn't set it. That's the point.
Oh.
I said checked it, but it disappeared and I haven't seen anything. So I don't know if it's going to shut out on me. This is crazy.
You're going to be on till the end. You know, God is there to intervene. We got this.
But Shaina, to further answer your question, I think the Prime Minister of Barbados, I think she has just raised the bar and I couldn't be more proud as a Caribbean woman. So those of us as women who are interested in leadership roles in politics, I mean, we have we now have an amazing example
Yes.
to learn from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And for me, it's something where it's almost as if her legacy is just getting started.
Yeah.
And it's not just local, it's not just regional, it's actually international in terms of the mark that she has made in to me, a short space of time. You know,
one of the things that I picked up from her that I would encourage young women to do if they so aspire to be in politics is to pay attention to how she developed her career. She's a lawyer first. So, I mean, you know, you have to prepare for the future that you want. That's my latest thing now. I'm realizing more now than ever, our young people have to be more intentional about the future that they want for themselves. And they have to intentionally plan for that. You know, the academic background that you want, as well as the career experience you want for that ultimate position in leadership that you might aspire to be.
Yeah. And that's very key because, you know, I say this a lot. I find myself saying this a lot lately in terms of even looking at us here in the Virgin Islands that, you know, leaders have to be developed. You know, we often think about leaders are born and not made, and that's not true. And John Maxwell would bear me out on that because he would always say, you know, once anything is a skill, it is something that you can learn. And it's important that you do, you know, put in the investment in learning leadership skills, learning what leadership is and what it isn't. I think Dr. Thompson touched on it in terms of her revelation that she received when she started to actually develop her leadership skills and thinking that she was a good leader. She was probably a good manager. I guess that would be the comparison, Dr. Thompson. You were a good manager, but not necessarily a good leader in the true definition of what leadership is. And we have to start to be more almost aggressive with it to make sure that we do have a development path for the leaders for tomorrow, especially our young women that tend to shy away, you know, because again, they hear us speaking of all these accomplishments, which come with work, but you know, that the accomplishments in themselves, I guess, are what fulfills us in terms of what it is that we do. So we have a question. So I want to get this in before we start to wrap up. And someone's asking, how can we continue to encourage creative young people to follow their dreams? So what would you encourage?
Support them. That's for one. If it's a fashion designer, you know, support the brand. Artists, support the brand. Whatever they're doing, support them. Show up. Show up for our sisters in Christ, you know.
You know, one of the things I find is that sometimes people don't understand who they are culturally. We're a British territory still.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that means in terms of nationalism, people won't say, well, you know, we're coming together as a nation. All right. And so there, in some cases, there are two separate Bermudas. The cost of living in Bermuda is high. I know that was one of your questions about one of the challenges about living in certain places. But when people don't see themselves as people who can aspire to leadership, when we look at all the obstacles that are in the way, instead of what we can do to make the change, even though it may be little steps. And so I encourage people to look at who they are and to respect who they are. You know, I had a teacher come in and tell the children who couldn't do math, we created the pyramids, you know, we created the sundial, we know mathematics. And when children understand and start to appreciate that their background and their heritage is important, it didn't start with slavery. It started with being kings and queens of the Nile. And so when we look at, I remember my mother, as a young person, she bought us these first Black dolls. We were the only people that had these dolls in the neighborhood. And they were walking dolls. They were almost as tall as we were. And she had gotten them from New York and had her sister bring them back. You know, but we saw that, you know, this was important. And many people don't think it's important. It's like, oh, is Jesus black or white? And it's not important. But if you're sitting in a church all year and everything is white, then subconsciously you're thinking that this might be the best of whatever. And I'm saying that with young people, we encourage them. Yes, we support them, but we really want to build their self-esteem, help them to realize who they are, especially in God. And once they do that, like me, I'm an imposter in terms of leadership, because it's you. She talked about preparing for the future. And I understand that. And I think it's important to prepare. But it's almost like God prepared a way for me. And I just had to follow the path. And so that's kind of like, so if anything goes awry, I say, God, that was you. Like, you put this in front of me. And this went this way. And maybe later on it'll come together. You can see the greater picture, because he who flies highest sees farthest. Okay? God sees everything. So there are no mistakes. And so with our children, we have to understand, they have to understand that they are no mistake, that they are purposeful. They have a purpose. They can tap into it, but allow God to help them to become who they are. And parents can use that as a guide to let children know that they are important. It doesn't matter that they get all A's. Everybody wants to be a lawyer and a doctor. And if we were all doctors and lawyers, who would take care of the world? We need nurses. And I'm not a good nurse. My mother can tell me I'm not the best nurse.
Yeah.
But I'm the best me that I can be. And I keep trying to develop me, because I spend time in prayer. I spend time in seeking God and asking him, what is it that you want me to do? And then I follow that path.
And I think that's very, very key in terms of what you both said, because I guess it was yesterday, I was having a conversation with someone at the college, and they were talking about creative. So there was a follow-up question in terms of the pathways for success. So he was saying to me that one of the things that we have to do differently or approach differently is to not discourage them, because that's one of the things where we need to probably start with, in terms of saying to our creatives, there's no opportunity in poetry, there's no opportunity in the arts, theater in the Caribbean. And because that's not true, because the more that they pursue these things, they start to create the opportunities for themselves, and they eventually will have a niche. And there's actually money involved, a lot of money involved in the performing arts, and there's no reason that we can't develop it and become to international level here within the region. Someone also was sharing earlier, just real quick. Oh, go ahead, Jan. Was you?
No, I just wanted to add to what you were saying. Basically, because what I was saying earlier about supporting them, purchase that garment or that art piece or whatever it might be. And I would also encourage, for young ladies out there or young entrepreneurs out there looking for a platform to showcase yourself. Caribbean Posh, that's what we are here for. Shameless plug.
I'm so
That's the purpose of what I do. So feel free to reach out to me. I will be happy to feature you and help you expand your reach and letting people know who you are and what you're about.
Yep. And that's so
Caribbean. I always promote on my platform. Shop Caribbean.
Yes.
I make it a point to shop. If I don't have to buy something on Nordstrom, I'm happy for that. When I go to the grocery store, if I could buy a local product versus the international product, I am all for that. Yeah. I just recently discovered this platform, Carib Shopper, I think they're called, that showcases a number of brands from around the Caribbean, whether it be produce or food items or artwork or what have you, jewelry. So we need to look into stuff like that so that we could spend more of our dollars amongst ourselves throughout the Caribbean.
Yeah, that's so true. And we also had a comment that came in talking about mentoring, the importance of being deliberate and intentional in mentoring. So, I know sometimes we think that these things have to be kind of like formula or structure, but I want to add to this, though, that it's important to have a teachable spirit, because I think Dr. Thompson is a perfect example of that she had the persons around her that were always opening doors and literally pushing her through. And sometimes some persons don't recognize it in the moment, because it might not be something that they think they need to be doing or they want to do, but that you have to have a teachable spirit to see, where is this going to lead, and what is God setting me up for, from that perspective to follow through on certain things. So that's important. And for those of us, well, I know all of us here on screen, we are mentoring somebody or many people, in some way, shape, or form or fashion, in terms of, lending our expertise and speaking into the lives of others. Because I have women ask me all the time, some are younger, some are peers, in terms of how do you do it? And I'm like, it starts with being organized. That's probably one of the first key things. But when you're clear in terms of your objectives, you're always going to find a way.
That's right.
And for them, encourage them in terms of focus, really start to hone in on what is it that we want to have done. So, and that was one of the reasons too, where we use our platform in terms of Territories Talk, again, to encourage, our peers, by showcasing our awesome Caribbean women. Because a lot of times, as Dr. Thompson said, we, look up to those we are seeing on the TV and the major networks, not realizing that, over in another island, we have some women that are lady bosses. Essentially. So I just want to thank you, beautiful people, for being here tonight. I'm sure our audiences enjoyed the conversation, and those that are going to pick it up later on, that they will see it. So we're going to have to bring back Dr. Thompson's whole family.
Yes, you can go on.
And Lynn, we're gonna keep it happy and bring the twin on too, because she has to tell as well. But yeah, I get really excited every time I do this show at just how amazing how amazing Caribbean women are, because it's something where growing up I didn't have it necessarily. So I'm so happy that I'm finding it now, and I've already promised from before, we're gonna do a conference. So Dr. Thompson, I'm putting you on notice. Janette, I'm putting you on notice.
Lots to be involved.
It's coming soon. We're gonna have a Caribbean Women's Summer, and I know there are some other networks and groups or organizations that are out there. So we're gonna do the research on it, and definitely put something together to make sure that we take this off screen virtually and actually start to do this in person and make it even happen way more. All right. So thank you again for being here on behalf of my co-hosts. For those who have just tuned in, yes, Chris and Eden, they're out tonight, and the ladies are holding the fort, but that's okay. We're happy to have had it. Thanks to our media partners, Cayman Marl Road, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio, Bermuda Channel 82, Radio Saba, as well as Barbados CBC Channel 8. As always, if this is your first time tuning in, be sure to go and like our Facebook page, so every time we have a show schedule, you get the notification, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel, Territories Talk, and you can catch up with us there. So until next time, this is your co-host Shaina Smith Archer saying, let's continue to inform and unite our overseas territories family. Good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.